We're going to go ahead and get started because I have the lovely time slot of right before lunch, so I don't want to be that person. But if you didn't get a chance to sign the QR or scan the QR code, please take a minute to do that. I think we have almost 60 responses already, so that's awesome. I was looking through some of the ideas. Hopefully you'll take at least one thing away from the presentation today. Really quickly, while some people maybe are still scanning, this presentation kind of grew organically out of the fact that this year, where I am teaching, we are departmentalized, so I got to focus more on ELA this year, which is my passion. And so this whole presentation is mostly ELA focused. However, a few years ago when I started attending P&C as an elementary classroom teacher, I felt like some of the presenters were a lot of secondary presenters, a lot of tech coaches, AIU, which everyone has a lot of things to offer, but I found myself sitting there sometimes and being like, yeah, but tell me, like, how is that gonna work in the actual classroom when I'm dealing with parent emails and students and recess and all of these things? Like, do you really do that? Is that really what happens? And so that's kind of how both of my presentations came to be, is I felt it was important to give other teachers the idea of things you can really do. I do these things all the time, every day in my classroom. So the hashtag is P&C. I changed it from Pete 2020 the other day, so hopefully none of the other ones are up there. But feel free to tweet throughout if you have an idea. If you have a question, there might not be a lot of time for questions in here, but if you have a question, if you tweet at me, I will answer you after. So again, my name is Kristen Zachary. I am a 5th grade teacher in the North Allegheny School District, which is about 20 minutes north of Pittsburgh here. This is my lucky year 13. It's definitely been one of those lucky year 13s too. So I really enjoy teaching 5th grade. I feel like I know what they're going to say and do before they actually do it. Sometimes that freaks them out a little bit, but I really enjoy teaching 5th grade. There's a lot of independence there, but one thing I do want to say is if you are a elementary teacher, K1, 2, 3, 4, I believe that anything that I present here today you can use to your benefit as well. And we will talk. So I think the first thing that I usually start with is organization, both on the teacher end and on the student end. So up here it's showing Google Drive right now, but I think organization in any way, shape, or form is important. So a lot of the kids at the beginning of the year, we talk about organizing their Google Drive. I'm fortunate enough to be in a school district where we do have Google Apps for Education. And so we talk about organizing their folders, naming them, color coding them, taking everything from the previous year and putting it, almost like putting it away. And we talk about the fact that it's not going away, but you can't have all of these things on your screen at one time. And so we talk about that. And then also just an example of my ELA folder, and they always laugh when I point at this one. I'm like, I so aptly named it 5B class stuff because that's what I know that it is. And so your Google Drive, if you have Google Drive, or let's talk about your home drive or wherever it is, it's one of those things that gets quickly out of control. Because if you're a classroom teacher and you're saving things, you're like, I'll deal with it later. And then all of a sudden things are everywhere and you have like untitled documents coming out of all the places and you don't even know what it is. One tip that I can tell you is I usually spend like a couple days after the year is over kind of trying to reorganize things that I maybe saved throughout the year in random places and putting them where they belong. Or sitting on my couch watching, you know, a television show, binge watching Netflix, and you're kind of just organizing things. It really does help to know where to find it. And don't try to replicate somebody else's organizational structure, because it's kind of, every time I try to do something that someone else did and I don't make it my own, you feel like a square peg in a round hole. You're like, oh, so you called it this, but I don't know what to find it. So mine's named 5B class stuff, and I know that everything that's related to that year for my homeroom kids lives in that 5B class stuff folder. And I know where to find the certain things. So you need to name things so that they mean something to you, not necessarily to mean something to someone else. So that's my first. So beginning of the year, I started doing this a couple of years ago, and I can't even begin to explain how eye-opening it was. You might already do something very similar, but I started sending home or emailing home a form at the beginning of the school year. So I created a Google form, and I created two of them actually. I created a parent survey and I created a student survey. Now, I presented this idea at my school district multiple times since I started doing it. People started hearing, I hear you're sending home this survey. How do I do it? What should I do? I have kindergarten through 5th grade teachers that send this survey home, and also kindergarten through 5th grade teachers that send a survey to their students. So even in 1st grade, obviously they might have less questions, more multiple choice, picking and choosing what's your favorite book, what do you like to read, what do you like to do for fun, and their parents can help them fill it out. So the beginning of the year, you can see kind of a blurb over there. I always send it usually as soon as I get my class list. So for those of us, at least in elementary, we're asked to kind of reach out prior to the day the school year starting. I would put a QR code this year in a letter that went home. I posted it on my website. I emailed it out to the parents. And for the parent survey, over the years, I've kind of built all of the things that I wanted to be in the form. Throughout the year, if something came up and I'm like, I really wish I would have known that earlier, that would have been helpful, I added it to the form for the next year. Nicknames and email addresses were like my top two. Nicknames, just knowing what they like to be called and being able to do that when they walk in the door. Now we have a lot of kids that go by shorter names or they go by their middle name. And it's nice to gather that information up ahead of time. Email addresses is also nice. I know in our gradebook system, there are parents that are signed up for email addresses, but the number of times they're like, oh yeah, that's email's in there, but that's not the one I use. And I'm like, okay, well, write down the one that you use so I have the one to actually email you if I need you. Strengths and areas of improvement. So I asked them, like, what are their strengths academically and basically just in general? What do you think your child is strong or strives, does well? And what are some areas you know that they could improve? Academically and socially, I want to know it all. Their feelings about school, like the question is really general. What are your children's general feelings about school? That's really important to know. I think that it's important to know when they're walking into your classroom, maybe what happened the previous year, maybe something happened over the summer, like how are they feeling when they're going to be coming to you? What are they motivated by? That one's also become very interesting over 13 years. Are they intrinsically motivated? A lot of us in elementary school, I feel like they're extrinsically motivated, but what motivates them? This one I added actually in the last 2 years, and I know if any other teachers are in the room, elementary teachers, I really started to notice kind of a lack of responsibility and a lack of independence with some of our kids. And so I was like, I feel like I need to ask this question. So I added that question probably 2 years ago. It's been very eye-opening. The question is basically related to what kinds of chores do they have to do at home? And do they do things independently? What are they expected to do? And I've actually used it to my benefit to say, hey, I hear at home you need to clean up your room every Saturday, and there's your things all over the floor. So do that. right? And so I added that one because I've just noticed in my experience over the last few years, the independence factor is really starting to lack. Like, I need a pencil, and it's like, what, solve your problem. Like, where are you going to get that? Where are the supplies? My paper ripped. Well, what are we going to do about that? Any other important information I should know is literally just a box that literally says any other important information that I should know, because there's so many times that, they leave out something like it's a split home, or my dad travels a lot, we have a nanny, all of these different things that don't seem like a big deal, but when we see those kids every day, it is a big deal. It's important to have that information in the back of your mind to make some important decisions. And then the last one, it literally says a great teacher, ... and then they get to fill in the blank. And I find that to be really eye-opening as well. You really see like where some parents maybe priorities lie, maybe what their previous experiences are with a teacher, what they're looking for. I just feel like when I read the answers, I get a really good idea of where I'm at. Also, with the students at the beginning of the year, I like to ask them about, brothers, sisters, pets, activities, the typical things. What did they do in the summer? Favorite or least favorite subject? How do you like to work? So the question is, in pairs, by myself, with a group, on the floor, all different types of answers that they can check box. If you like to read books, what kinds of books do you like to read? We're going to get to that in a minute. The drop off, I feel like, of independent reading. Like now the kids are like, I don't know, because they don't read books, they watch YouTube. So if I ask them what YouTube channel they like to watch, they probably come up with a whole list. But books has become difficult, I feel like, over the years. Strengths and areas of improvement. I ask them like tech questions, like, are you familiar with Google Drive? Do you have internet at home? Do you have your own iPad? We have school iPads. We're very fortunate the students have their own iPad. Things I talk about today, they don't need their own iPad to do, because 5 years ago we didn't have our own iPads, and we shared and had a cart, and then we were in a lab. So I've done it all in 13 years. But I ask them the tech questions because I think that's important to know. Are they excited? What are they excited about, and what do they dread about starting school? Super excited to see friends, usually. Super excited for recess. Dread ELA is usually how it goes. And then a great teacher. I want to see what they say about a great teacher as well, which also has been very eye-opening. So that was something, like I said, I started a few years ago. It's not necessarily ELA related, but anybody teaching ELA, I just feel like it's a good tip. Flipgrid is another app. About 2 years ago, I think at this point, Flipgrid went completely free. I believe Microsoft bought it. Now it's free for educators forever, they say. And one of the ways that we used Flipgrid this year on our team is with this survey, we also posted a link to a Flipgrid, and they did a little video introduction to their classmates. I've been wanting to do it for a few years, and it's just one of those things that was always on my back to school to-do list. And then it was back to school, and I was like, well, that ship sailed. I guess I'll do it next year. And I did it this year, so that was great. You make that list, you make it in July, and it's all the things, and then August, you're it's some of the things, and it's the week before their kids are coming, and you're like, that'll be next time. So, but this was really cool. I really enjoyed this. I will continue to do it every year now. It was nice to see the kids' faces. They liked seeing each other. They were, I didn't have them to pull up today, but super creative. One of them was in the backyard, and he was showing us his, teepee that he made out of sticks, and telling us about what he did this summer. I mean, they did it all over. One of them was on a skateboard, and you could tell that mom was videoing it as he went by. It just told us a lot about the child before they came, and I thought that was pretty cool. It also looked like it got some family members involved because they were videoing them doing all of these things as well. So that was really cool. Another little tip, no matter what grade level or what you teach, kind of doing those introductions. I highly recommend setting it up June or July. Don't wait till the last minute. Schoology is something that we use in 5th grade. It's not purchased by our district. It's something that my teammate and I have used, the free version. I think we're going on 6 years of using it. A lot of people in this room might use Google Classroom. That was just opened for us in recent years. We were already using Schoology prior to that. The free version has been fine for what I've used it for over the last few years. Even with the younger grades, because I know I've presented about Schoology to kindergarten and 1st and 2nd grade teachers, it's like a one-stop shop where they can get the items. So even if you teach 1st grade or 2nd grade or 3rd grade, having these folders of places to go. For example, the one we use daily, and actually my kids this morning, I was sitting out there finishing something up, and one of my students emailed me and was like, the spelling test for lesson 19 isn't unlocked. Could you do that? And I was like, oh, right, I was supposed to do that. So I went right in the spelling folder and unlocked the test, and they were now taking their spelling test while I'm here. And so it's a nice place to keep the documents. The kids join your course at the very beginning of the year. Again, this is the 100% free version. They join your little course. You can see up there it's 5B ELA 2020 and 2019. This is my version, so anything that's kind of not a bold color, I can see it, but it's unpublished for the kids. So I can turn things on and off so that their screen is not messy. They only see what I need them or want them to see, which I really liked. And I did dabble into Google Classroom once it was opened. The thing that I'm still not sure that I like about Google Classroom in comparison to what I've been using with Schoology is that constant stream. I just feel like it's really messy, and I have a hard time figuring out where things go. It also could be my comfort level is over here. But like right now, the kids can only see tests because they took their spelling test today. Spelling, and we're going to talk about how I've streamlined turning in spelling homework, which has been awesome. The reading folder, there's something in there. And today, actually the next 3 days while I'm gone, they're working on figurative language. So they're gonna go directly to the figurative language folder today. There's a Nearpod in there that's gonna talk about the types of figurative language. They're gonna copy it down into a little notebook, and then they're creating a figurative language folder. But the directions are in that figurative language folder. So like when I left, in my subplans, I took a picture of that and put it in there, and it literally says, go to the figurative language folder and follow like the tasks of what to do. That makes it super easy as well. And once again, totally free, all free. So, try it. The first year we did this, all that we did was spelling. Literally had a spelling folder and spelling tests. And that was all I did for the first year in Schoology. Every year we built a little bit more as I've become more comfortable. Another thing that I know that my fellow classroom teachers in the room can understand is, what do I do when I'm done? Or they like to come up and tell you, like, I'm done. You're like, okay, well, on the board it says what to do. Thanks for telling me, you know, like, but they do. They come up, they're like, I'm done. I was like, okay, thank you. But, so I wrote this on the board every day. It's like listed in my room, but then I made a Schoology folder too that said options for when you finish early, because ELA is such a different animal, but I also feel like math can be very similar in the way of everybody finishes at such different times. What you think someone should take, some time should take to write this paragraph, you know, there's 3 people over there that are still on the second sentence, and then there's 6 people over here that are like, my paragraph's done, now what are we doing? And you don't want to make those kids feel bad by moving on, and you also don't want to hold these kids back. And so it's this constant balancing act that I still have not figured out, but I feel like every year I add a little bit more. So these are some things that I wrote down as examples. Right now they're working on an author study project, so that's always an idea that they can work on, which I have in my slides coming up. But reading a chapter book, practicing no red ink, that's a website that is also mostly free. The kids do like practicing different grammar skills in no red ink because it is kind of pop culture and they like that. Practicing a topic in Study Island. We have access to Study Island that's aligned to PA standards, so we use that. Work on Spelling City, practicing their spelling words. I made a No More Boring Practice. It's one of those Scholastic ebooks that I bought, but I uploaded the answer key because then they can scan the code and they can open up the key and they can check their own answers. And then a Quizlet that has different PSSA vocabulary. So I could continually add to this list throughout the year, and then you just say, go to the folder and work on something that's in there, or tell them what they have to work on. So for spelling, this is where we started our first year. So inside the spelling folder, all of the lessons are listed. And then you can set up to make a submission, so it means they have to take a picture or submit a picture of some sort, and then the PDF underneath is actually the answer key. So in 5th grade, we have them check their own answers. This is just a screenshot of one of the pages that I can see when they submit it. And the nice part is I can do this on my iPad. There's a little pen up here you can tap on if you're on an app, if you're on the app on your iPad, or if you're just on the website, and you can mark things if you wanted to mark on top of them. I don't typically do that, At the beginning of the year I do, just to make sure that I'm checking in on their spelling homework. You can download it, you can print it, you can type on it, you can see all the different submissions, and then they can see like what score. I don't keep my grades in Schoology, but they can see like what score they got, 5 points for submitting it and doing it correctly. My teammate uses it a lot in math for them just basically documenting that I did the work. And across the bottom here, which I didn't have room to put, you can quickly toggle through all of the kids, so you're not going back into all these individual folders. You're just constantly moving through. On Monday mornings, I can check and see who doesn't have their spelling turned in and who does. Over here, it'll say like 24 out of 30 kids. You can go immediately to the kids that haven't turned it in, and I'll, you know, as they're coming in, I immediately call them over and I'm like, what's going on? Why is your spelling not turned in? So that's been really nice. That is literally what we started with in Schoology. The very first year we did it, that was the only thing that we did. Trying to streamline that whole spelling process of like collecting the spelling homework and checking it. And I don't want all of these spelling packets stacked up, especially now that I have 2 classes. I don't need 52 spelling packets stacked up, so I try to go through them and give them back by the time the next week comes around. They just need to take a picture. We do have to talk about appropriate picture taking, meaning like I have to be able to read it. It shouldn't be like you took it from like the sky or at an angle, like on your lap, you know. So the very first, this was lesson 2, I believe, the very first week we did it in class together. Like we all got our spelling out on Friday and we set it on the desk and we, you know, talked about, I mirrored it and we talked about how to take a good picture. We also had to revisit that in January because some of the pictures started coming in that were like on the laps again, and we had to talk about again what the appropriate picture taking process looked like. But we know we do that every day with elementary kids.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Is the answer key not put up until they submit?
Yes, so actually if I go back, that's a good question that I skipped over. You can, in the free version too, you set up in the permissions under student progress, the check mark, see how it says must make a submission, must view the item? You can set it to unlock as you go. So we always set the homework to be you must make a submission, and once that green check mark, they see the green check mark, it unlocks the next thing below it. That's also a very nice feature of Schoology that I didn't see in Google Classroom when I was looking at it. The fact that you can unlock certain things. So the figurative language is the same way while I'm not here. You have to do this to unlock this, to do this to unlock this. So that's nice. So that's just an example of we put our spelling packets together from, you know, our spelling curriculum. And then I put the QR code to the bottom for Spelling City, also the free version. I don't use the paid, I don't pay for the paid version. They scan the code. It's enough to do test me, practice, and they can practice their words. And this is just an example of what the spelling test looks like. We do multiple choice spelling tests in 5th grade, so that would be the only, I guess, way that you might want to do something like that with the test if you're able to do something with multiple choice. One of the things, we used to have a paragraph at the end where they had to type, but then we realized that you'd always have to turn off the it detecting the spelling, and then you had to trust that they did that and then turn it back on, and that was a lot. So it was just anything with the multiple choice or matching will work really well. So time savers, because we all love those. These are my top time savers. Some are paid, some are not, but if they're paid, like the ones that are up there that are paid, I paid for myself because they were really minimal. Genius Scan is an app that's free. I actually recommend it on your phone too. It's kind of nice to have. You just scan it. It immediately turns it into a really nice PDF. I started using that one a lot for documenting student work. So you know you have that student at the beginning of the year and you start looking at their grades and you start looking at their paperwork and you're like, I'm gonna need this later for a meeting or conferences, and if I send this home in this take-home folder, I don't know if it's gonna come back, and I need to make sure I have these tests because when we go to meet, I wanna have the test and I don't know if they'll return. So Genius Scan, like if I think that it has a possibility of disappearing into the bottom of the backpack and never returning, I'll just scan it super fast. It saves it as a PDF. I can email it to myself and save it in Drive, save it wherever. Leave it in Genius Scan, but I have it because we all know that sometimes, especially the grades that are not so great, somehow find this way of never coming back. And you want them, you need them to be able to talk about it at different meetings. ZipGrade is my favorite. It's my favorite time saver. It has saved me so much time. If you do any sort of test, exit ticket, anything that's multiple choice, you should use ZipGrade. On the next screen, we'll talk a little bit about what that is, but I love it, and it's a minimal fee, but it's so worth it. Small PDF is another one that has a 14-day free trial, and I put the link in there when I share my presentation with you to the pricing for it. I did start to pay for it the last 2 years because I was using it a lot more often, and they kind of limit you to like, you can do this many free, I think it's like this many free a day, this many free in 24 hours, and I was trying to make a lot of things at one time to save myself time, and so it was worth it for me. I think it was $48 for the whole year, and I was like, yep, done, save it, all the money. So that was one. And then these two are screencasting tools. They're both free. They have paid versions. I've never found the need for one because I honestly believe no one should be making a video more than 5 minutes that a kid has to watch. So you shouldn't make a video that's longer than 5 minutes. They're not watching it if it's longer than 5 minutes. They might not even be watching it if it's 2 minutes, but definitely not if it's over 5 minutes. And both of these allow you to save to the desktop, record. I think actually this one is up to 15 minutes, which should also not be happening. But this one's 5 minutes, free, don't need the paid. It's offered, but there's no reason at all. The only reason I put those up there, also I knew about these prior to the iPads adding that whole, you can record your screen. There's certain times where I want to show the kids something on a website and I want it to look like what they're going to see. And we all know that the website and apps or website and Safari don't always look the same. Or if I'm sending home like a video to show the parents how to get to my website from their laptop, I want it to look like it's gonna look on their laptop. And so I'll use one of these to send a quick video to say, here's how to log into Study Island from a laptop, here's how to get into Schoology from a laptop, because I want it to mirror. I found that even if I say do this, it's different if you don't show it. So these two are also huge time savers. I've made quick 2-minute tutorial videos during a planning period and emailed it out to someone that couldn't figure out what to do. So ZipGrade, I figured out how to make an animated GIF down here, and my tech integrator, I had asked him for his Bitmoji. Chuck Samick actually helped me, so I told him I would add him in there. So this is kind of a very quick version of what I do. So every week they take, this test. It's a weekly Study Island test, but it's on a multiple choice Scantron sheet. So I think of those Scantron sheets we used to fill out when I was in elementary school or even in high school, and then they run it through the machine and you got it back and it had this signs on it. This is from your phone or from basically any device that has the availability to have the app. This is the ZipGrade, I guess, Scantron sheet that's pretty typical. They can fill out on their website. They have 20 and 50 that are just print it off and use it in 5 minutes. You can also create your own, which I have done, and you can change the numbers. I started using them for our weekly reading tests because teaching 5th grade, they have to be able to do that whole transfer between the tests. We're writing on the test, but we're transferring onto the answer sheet because that's going to be important. So I use ones that I make, but of course, with our reading series, it's A, B, C, D, and then it's, G, H, I, J, K, and then you're like, well, that's not going to work. On ZipGrade, you can change it. You can make it have the letters inside. It can not have the letters inside. I find the letters are helpful. You can change the letters to be what the letters need to be for the test you have. So let's say it's like X, Y, Z, O are your choices. You can have it say that. And so it saved me a lot of time. I scan every single one. I've also found it to be super helpful for the time where someone comes back and is like, I marked C. And I'm like, oh, you did, really, let's look back. And then we look at it and they changed it. But I'm like, well, the picture says you marked B. And then usually they're like, oh, all right, never mind. And they're always in there. I still have last year's tests. I still have the prior year's tests. I mean, I could delete them, but they're always there. Once you make the answer key, you can just copy it for the next year. So when I did this scan on Friday, I copied last year's answer key and it opened up in a new one, and I scanned everybody's, and then I do pull it up and I mark on it. Otherwise it wouldn't mark it. So you can see in this animation, once I scan her test, which I had already marked, so that wasn't the greatest example, it pops up and shows me the percent right away. and then I mark down which ones are wrong. We've used this too for math tests when I taught math last year, and give them a scan, like, you know, if it's a holiday and we're like, you can have 2 scans before you turn it in. And we would scan it and say, okay, you've missed 5, you missed 6, go back and try. We also started doing that with some of these tests to kind of build that perseverance again. Like we talked about the independence, I'm noticing perseverance is definitely like dropping off. And so it's go back and try, because we're trying to teach them to learn, not to just get a grade and move on. So again, free version is actually, the monthly scan limit is 100. So if you don't think you're gonna scan more than 100, just use the free version. I use it all the time. So I think I started with the free version and then realized like how amazing this was, and it was saving me so much time. And so it's $7 for the whole year, which anybody that grades a lot of papers, you're like, again, take all of my money. Here's $6.99. It's totally worth it. Small PDF. So Small PDF, again, had that free version. They definitely have ones. These are the 2 that I use the most often. Merge PDF, so you can pull up multiple PDFs. So I just did this with a social studies packet that I wanted to take like 3 pages from over here and 3 pages from over here, but I don't want that weird, like when you scan it and it gets like all wonky and then like you can't see it. This is the real PDF, so you're also not getting the color distortion if you're scanning it and then trying to put it together and all these things. It looks really nice and professional when it's done. Also was worth, like I said, it ended up being $48 for the whole year, but I use it a lot to put different parts of tests together or piece together. I was actually making an adapted packet for social studies. So ELA and social studies is what I'm teaching this year. And I wanted some pages from the original packet, but I needed these adapted pages that I had made a closed procedure on, and I didn't want to recreate the wheel. So I just like pulled this one up in PDF and pulled this one up in small PDF, and I just picked which ones, and it made it like a new PDF in like 3 minutes. It was amazing. And then you can also split. So that's nice too, is you upload a PDF and I'm like, okay, I don't want this table of contents and I don't want the last page, and I'm just gonna take these pages, and it saves it into a document. You save it right to the desktop, print it, save it, do whatever. Those are my 2 favorites. Curriculum night. So some people might call it curriculum night, back to school night, open house night, whatever the night is that the parents come and sit like you're sitting in front of me right now, and then they stare at you and you give them all the information. We started to realize, or I guess started to realize, that I was like talking about all of these things and I really didn't need to tell them, like, here's the schedule, and waste 5 minutes. So we kind of started putting it on the parents a little bit. We send home, 40 seems like a lot. When I counted how many, I was like, oh, I send them 40 slides to review? Okay. But a lot of them are really quick slides. Like, what do you do if you need to pick up your child early? What do you do if there's band lessons pullouts? What do you do if you're taking kids on vacation? And so we put a code at the end, and we say if there's any questions, put it in the Google form. Anytime you can get like a head of questions, it's really helpful, right? So that on parent night, they're not like, well, I wondered about this. Like, they might scan the code and put it in, and then you already have an answer. And you can even put it in the presentation. But you can also be prepared for some of those questions. We reviewed things like how to communicate with us, what's the best way, our class expectations, like the class rules, you know, you have to talk about them, but like, do I have to say it to them in front of them and waste that 45 minutes saying it? iPad rules, because we have iPads 1-to-1 now. What's the organization? You need a binder, and you need folders, and you need tabs, and all of these things. They should already have them by that night, but homework expectations. We deal with lesson pullouts and things for band and orchestra, and maybe speech pullouts. What do you do? Curriculum, like overviews, like here's what we do for math and reading, and then what's the grade book? How do you find it? And what are you going to do for conferences? All of those things, or most of those things, are sent home ahead of time. So they look at it. They might scan the code. In the last 3 years I've done this, I think we got like 3 questions ahead of time, and then we tell them on a slide too, or I tell them on a slide, this is what we're going to talk about that night. We're going to talk about what parent-teacher conference signups are going to look like. We use Sign Up Genius, started using that, free version also. That has been also very helpful. They used to sign up in person, and then everyone wanted to change, they sign up in August, and then our conferences are in November, and then everyone wants to change their time. And on Sign Up Genius, they can just go in and edit their time as long as there's a time slot available. We started doing that as a team 3 years ago, and that's been really nice. It also sends them an email reminder like the day before their conference so they don't not show up on you. I use Remind. That's another one, so Remind 101. Tiger ID is our single sign-on, so that was what's on there. We talked about that. All these different things, like I said, are talking about. These were all things that I felt like I needed to deliver in person. The things on that slide are all things that I didn't feel like I needed to stand up in front and deliver in person, because I started to realize there were just so many things to talk about. So, another thing is that I do, I guess, some version of flexible seating in my classroom, which has been interesting for sure. I do like it a lot. It's a lot of getting used to. Start small if you're thinking about doing something like that. But that's something I feel like we need to discuss in person, because there aren't a lot of flexible classrooms coming up through kindergarten, first, second, third grade yet. People are starting to change over, but I think the parents aren't quite understanding, like, why are we doing this? Why does the room look like this? That's something that needs to be talked about in person. So, ELA things. One more. Oh, conferences. With the conference form, I send home in Google Forms a conference confirmation form. This is for 2 reasons. Also, getting ahead of things. I like to ask them about, you know, when is your conference and what time is your conference? I have found people that write down the wrong date and the wrong time, so that's really nice to double check. And then academic concerns, social concerns, and anything else you want to talk about at the conference. It really helps you get ahead. I know, at least I would think, at some point, everybody in this room has been at a parent conference and they came at you from like the side with this question, and you're like, you know, and you're like, well, I'm gonna get back to you on that, right? Because you weren't like prepared for where that was coming from. It's nice to kind of get that out there. If someone is asking, you know, I noticed that my child's coming home and they're upset and they're talking about lunch. Okay, well, if you fill this out like 3 weeks before, I can pop in the lunchroom and check in and see, like, are they sitting by themselves? Are they, because I don't do lunch duty, so I wouldn't know that. But if you ask me in that moment, I was unable to figure out to give you that information. And so it was nice to kind of get that and figure out, like, what are they coming in? A lot of parents will write none, 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 and you're like, oh, great, okay, sounds good. That was just another thing that I've learned over the years, to kind of just get ahead of things and have myself organized. You can print this out too and have it, like I have it right on top of the folder that I'm about to talk to them. There's an add-on, I didn't write it up here, but it's called Save As Doc in Google Forms. And it literally takes the answers to the forms and saves it as a doc, just like it says. And so it prints one for every kid, and I just lay them on top of the folders, and then I can just pull them out and I can immediately look and see what they wrote down. So Save As Doc. And this was another one. Did you know that if you have a Google Sheet or an Excel spreadsheet of names, if you highlight all of the names, and then in the Google form, if you make a drop-down box, in the first row, if you right-click and paste, it'll auto-populate all of the names at one time. When I learned that, it like also saved my life. I love that. So that was interesting. And younger students, if you wanted them to do something with a form, again, you could pair up with an older grade level to try to help. So author study project, this is also something that has grown over the years. So this is just an example of what goes home with them, but basically in so many words. In a 9-week grading period, they need to read 3 books by the same author. And I give them a list of approved authors, but the list has grown over the years. Now they've started to bring to me different names. As long as I look them up and make sure they're okay, we add them to the list. They have to read 3 books by the same author, and with each book they have to do 3 things. They have to write a 5th grade level summary. They have to write a critique, so we talk about what that is, and I explain it in there. And they also have to complete a choice board activity. So I know right now the big push, but I feel like it's always been a push for like differentiation and having student choice, but like it's like coming out again, like it's a new thing. But like they always have choices for the most part within reason. But like choice boards are a big thing now. And I've always been, this is like the 2nd year I started teaching, we did a choice board and we called it that too. So I guess I was ahead of the game, I don't know. And so these choice board activities have also changed over the years. There's something as simple as create 5 new titles for the book and say why they would be good. Create an 8 8-panel cartoon, making the major events. And now the kids are like, can I make it in a book reader? Because they have like the cartoon creation tool. There's also another like comic creation tool that's out there that they use. So in my mind, 12 years ago, they were doing it on a piece of paper. Now the kids are actually sometimes doing it with tech. Create 5 why questions and then answer your own questions. They're not meant to take a lot of time, but they are meant to hold some accountability. So I noticed that in someone's question of like, how do I hold the kids accountable? My goal is for them to read 3 books because, as I said, I noticed that reading a book, not just picking up and staring at the words for 15 minutes when you say it's silent reading time and then putting the book back down. Reading a book from beginning to end and then doing something with it is really starting to, I think, fall by the wayside with all of the different, I love technology. I'm here at the Pennsylvania Educational Technology Conference, but playing all of those games and playing all of the video games is really, I believe, starting to take the place a little bit of physically reading a book, even if you're reading it on your iPad. And so you have to hold them accountable or they're not going to do it. So those are what we started with. And then over the years, we added tech-enhanced choice word activities. So they can pick from any of them. These have been created over the years too with kid input as well. So a Google slideshow, book or movie trailer. Some of them wanted to create Prezzies. That was an interesting one. Animotos, if they have that or want to buy that, some of them have done that. There's a trading card creator that they can use. I think it's through Read, Write, Think. It's a trading card creator. That one doesn't work on iPads though. It's Flash-based, so you have to do it on a laptop. I had a student come up this year and asked me in the next slide we talk about GarageBand, and they were like, "Can we do a GarageBand project?" And I was like, "Yep." Because I feel like as long as they're going to do something that has to do with the book, you're like, "Yeah, do it." Like, why do I have to? I feel like it's interesting. You have to let go of the control of like, no, you must pick one of those things on there. You have to kind of stop and think. If they're showing what they know, you can. So then. We have an example here.
Hi, my name is Kate. I read 3 books from Monday, Sunday, 8 pages in the series of House. I read The Green Grotto, The Hotel Hospital, and Me. My least favorite book out of the 3 was probably The Hotel Hospital because it was the least interesting to me and it didn't appeal to me. My favorite book out of the 3, though, was The End because it had a lot of important events that go with the story. If I were to recommend this book to an age of a student, I would recommend it to really any student who can handle gory books, because this book is not exactly happy. So, even though I didn't really like one of the books, all the books in the series of Unfortunate Events are great books, and I think you should read them.
So that's an example of the poster that they have to come in and create when they're finished. Now, it depends on what kind of, a school district or what kind of student background you have here. Do you need to make the poster at school? Do you need to chop it up into chunks and say, okay, by this 3 weeks, you're going to bring in all the items for the first book and we're going to put it on the poster here at school and we're going to do the second and the third. I mean, I think you have to decide what you want to do with that. But they do have to create some type of a poster, and then we put these up at what it's like our art and curriculum show, so the kids aren't standing there. So I kind of was looking for an idea of like, how can they be there but not be there, if that makes sense. And so they put a QR code on there, and that's what it is. And so when you're going around, almost like when you go to a museum, you can scan their QR code that's on their poster, and their little video pops up, and it's like 40 seconds, I think, if you stop there, and she tells you to do 3 things. What books did you read? Which one was your favorite? Who would you recommend it to? So it's like you're going around at some of those museums and kind of learning about it. I thought it was neat that you can actually like see the student too. So, author study. And I would be happy to share that with anybody. I think I found the idea about an author study online about 12 or 13 years ago, and everything that's after that are all things that I typed up. So if you tweet at me or want me to send you the project, I'll send you the whole thing. So Take Your Child to Work Day is really interesting for teachers, right? Because there's a lot of kids that are missing school. I loved it as a child. I became an educator because both of my parents were in education. My dad just retired last year after being a principal for 41 years, and my mom was an elementary librarian for 36 years. And I went every year, and I loved it, and I ate it up, and that's how I ended up here. But I do know that like some kids will go and they're going, they're going for the free lunch and all the different things. And then you feel bad for those kids that are back at school, like they couldn't go, and mom and dad have a job that's confidential and they can't be there. And I wanted to try to make it a meaningful day no matter where they were. Some of them probably like it and some of them probably don't, but I think it's really neat, and it's really brought a lot of good conversation back to school. So if they go to work with their parents, they have to fill out these interview questions. They basically are interviewing the person, like, what do you do, and what's a typical work day for you? Do you take work home? Do you work any outside of your school, or outside of your school day, outside of your work day? Do you travel? How much, what kind of education do you have to have? And if they're at school, there's a website where they can do a career interest survey, and they kind of can fill out what they might be interested in, and they do research on that. So no matter what you're doing, you're still filling out some information. And then they come back to school, and I did use Screencast-O-Matic for this, by the way. So I hit present on my computer, and then I just hit Screencastify so it would record it so that it would show you what a presentation might look like. So when they came back, they created this, and then they had to present it to the class. So either it was what they researched or where they went. But it did make it more meaningful, because I do teach 5th grade. They're about to go to the middle school, and some of the ones would be like 50 hours a week. I'm like, right, and I asked you to read for 20 minutes last night. That was it, right? Or it's like, I bring home, work every night, and they're like, what? I'm like, kind of like your homework. See, we're getting ready. And so I think it made it more meaningful of like, oh, like my parents do work after I go to bed or whatever it is. And it was just interesting. I think it made that day more meaningful and had a purpose. Okay, book tasting. This was something that was brand new this year. You may have done something similar in your classroom. I found the actual book tasting idea on Teachers Pay Teachers, so I'm giving them credit for that. But what I did was I bought the tablecloths that was also from off of there, and they had to fill out this little menu. And so I picked out a bunch of books and set them out in the middle of the room. We played the music. I set the timers. They moved around to different spots, and they had to, taste the book. You had to read for so many minutes at each spot, pick the different ones, write down what you like. They kept this little menu so that they could use it for their first book project of the year. My big goal of having just ELA and social studies to focus on this year was really starting the ground running, second week of school, pick a chapter book that you like, you're gonna read it and you're gonna do something with it. Like, I want you to start reading immediately. So this book tasting was like the first step in getting them to pick out a book that they might like, that they would stick with. And then I created this. Totally was my own. I started with a blank board on Google Docs and thought, what would I want them to do? Small and easy to start the school year. So again, I kind of stole off of my own idea from the author study of an iMovie book trailer. Easy, if they have an iPad. Creating an additional chapter in Book Creator. Each page should be the length of your current book. I only had a couple takers on that one, but I wasn't sure. I was like, I might have some budding authors in the class. Create a soundtrack of 5 songs using GarageBand, and I can't wait to share these with you because it was the coolest. And then each song has to have a title and an explanation, and I wrote "See Me" for the paper. You're the director of a movie version. You have to cast actors. Who would you cast for each role? Make a collage with pictures. Write a poem. Create a green screen video. Newscast. I did have a couple kids that were like interviewing each other. Use magazine to make a collage. Make a presentation in Google Slides. The trusty old cereal box, or board game, or shoebox diorama, and I got a couple of those too. And then free space, I was like, well, I'm out of ideas. Literally, there was that last square, and I was like, I am tapped out. I have no more ideas. So it said free space, and I said, like, ask me about a project idea. And I did. There was a kid, I guess I don't know that I had one up there. He was like, can I just make a poster? And I was like, yep. You can totally just make a poster. I was trying to make it really hard, and you can make a poster. So then they had to fill out this to go with whatever project they were doing. So they had to say what their name, the book title, author, what project you choose and why, and then explain how your project shows that you actually read the book. This was the GarageBand playlist, so they had to say, like, what would the title be, and then why does this song go with that section. This is just a screenshot of a Google slide presentation. And then sound of the alarm. Okay, so this was one of my favorite ones. The title is Good Day Goes Bad. Let's see if we have sound. Or Wi-Fi. Alright, we'll take one. See if we can. That was when the day went bad. And I was skipping ahead because we're running out of time, but like it's literally like do do do, and then he like puts in the air guitar, and you're like, oh, that's where it changed. Okay, got it. And so a lot of the kids were super, I mean, these are just some of the examples that I'd say. Keith dropping the ball, like I remember that one's being like super happy, like they're playing basketball, and then it was like he dropped the ball at the basketball game. And then they were explaining why they picked that. It was like the coolest idea I feel like that I've ever like come up with. And now they're allowed to do it for the author study project too. They're like, absolutely, go for it. So that was really neat if you have access to GarageBand on your accounts. These are just some examples of some things also that they can do in their free time. If you're not familiar with Wonderopolis, you should definitely check it out. They have daily wonders. It's like, why is the sky blue? Or why is gum sticky? Like, it's literally random questions, which I know teaching 5th graders, they love answers to random questions. And so you can pick one, and there's a lot of things on Teachers Pay Teachers or even online or through Wonderopolis that they can fill out for that accountability factor. It could be in an area maybe of your room where they can take a paper when they need it. I feel like a lot of us probably knows about News ELA, it's pronounced both ways. That one's really neat for sure. You can use the Lexile levels. Nearpod's always a great go-to. Dreamscape is a new one that we just discovered. It is a free app. Those of you that might teach math, although you're in here for ELA, so probably not. But Prodigy, if you've heard of Prodigy, Dreamscape is the ELA version of Prodigy, and I can assure you it really is. The kids are like obsessed to a level of we've had to like put a tap on it a little bit. But the questions are really great. They're standards aligned. You can go in on the teacher dashboard and see exactly what standards they're working on and how many questions they've answered about that standard. They like it. It has more of a game battle feel. One of the kids said it's like Clash of Clans, and I'm like, okay. And then a little bit like Fortnite maybe, and I was like, okay. Like they like to battle each other, I guess.
Is that reading or like reading in grammar? Or
This is reading, grammar, and vocabulary, because I've seen the kids answering vocabulary questions too. And when they start answering the questions, it like levels as they go. So it's going to start them on a level that's good for them and then move as they need to. And then the vocabulary and spelling city. For classroom management, we have used Classcraft this year. The kids are really motivated by points. If you're not familiar with that, definitely recommend checking out Classcraft. And for Class Dojo, I don't like the whole point system with Class Dojo. Teaching 5th grade, I feel like it might cause more problems than necessary. Some people love it though. I basically use it for the group maker because it's awesome. And the different like random name picker. But for the group maker, if you're not familiar in Class Dojo, which is one of the only reasons I use it, you can behind the scenes allow certain kids to never be in a group together, and they think you're like a wizard because they're like, I am never with Joey, and you're like, that's so weird. Why you're never together? But behind the scenes, you can literally set up who's never going to be there, and they're like, it's never happened. I'm like, it's just the way the world works, I guess. ELA. So I feel like we've talked about a lot of these apps, but I'm going to keep moving because we are almost finished. Seesaw can be adapted for any grade level. If you're not familiar with Seesaw, they have Twitter, they have Facebook groups, they have PD in your PJs. The free version is totally fine. We used it for lots of years before we finally used it so much that our parent-teacher organization was like, we would love to pay for this for you. And we were like, we would love for you to do that. But the free version was great. It can be as simple as having them open it up, solve a problem, show something. It's a nice communication tool between parents and the students and you, and it totally can be closed down that way. Their Facebook groups, they go all the way down to Seesaw for kindergarten teachers, and so you can join that if you teach kindergarten. They have a YouTube channel. You can watch all of their webinars to learn from in your PJs if you want to. And so those are all the different PDs that go with Seesaw. You can send announcements. So like I use Reminds, so I don't use the announcements tool so much with this, but like our phys ed teachers use the announcements a lot. Our art teachers might use the announcements a lot. Posting student work, there's a lot of options. You can take a photo like in the moment, which you'll see an example of here. You can upload a document already done. They can write a note, they can do a link, they can take a video, they can do a drawing. You can organize them by folders, which is really nice. This is a QAR lesson, not a spelling lesson, as you can see on the board. When I used the example, I was like, oh, but that wasn't what it was about. So it was showing the parents the difference between these two types of question-answer relationships. And so we talked about it in class. We had done a lesson about it. Their job that day at the end of class, almost like an exit ticket, was create a drawing to show your parents what a right there question is versus a think and search question. And so whatever drawing that they chose to make, what's a right there question, what's a think and search type question, and then they submitted it. And I could see it come right through, approve it, their parents could see it, it went right to their phones or to whatever device they signed up on, so then that night they could say, hey, I heard you learned about these two types of questions today, like tell me about that. That's the biggest thing about Seesaw, is that communication tool. You can also schedule an activity in advance and attach like a template. Read, record, write notes. So here, earlier this year, we were doing independent, dependent, and not a clause. Basically, they were doing a sort. And they need to add a caption to tell someone what you did. And so they had to upload, they had to do the picture, or do the item in a group. And then they had to upload their photo and then add in a caption. So this is the teacher view. I can see them as they're coming in, so that I can see that all of these students that have a picture have turned it in. I need to check in with the 3 that are blank to ask them where theirs is or what they need to do. Goals informational writing, we just finished doing this. They just had to take a picture of it before we hung it up in the school, and that went home via Seesaw so the parents could see it. They added a little caption. We may, if you come to Fixer Upper tomorrow at 9:30 in this same exact room, we'll talk about making brochures in Apple Pages. And so we also uploaded those via Seesaw so the parents could see those. Same thing with Book Creator. So those of you unfamiliar with Book Creator, taking something you used to do and having it be a digital book. You can turn it into a video on Book Creator. You can also just have it as a PDF. I will share this with everyone. Those of you that are not familiar with Padlet, Padlet has been awesome. I've used it 2 specific times this year. This one here we actually just did last week before I left to come here. We were talking about inferencing, taking or paraphrasing, and we're taking this sentence and like how are you going to take the important parts as a group and put them together. So I made the Padlet with the numbers across the top, and then each group had to add their version of the paraphrase sentence underneath, and then we post it up and we can read everybody's and see, did we get all of the main ideas. This is one we did at the beginning of the year with types of sentences. So they had to take the sentence which was, the boys are marching in the parade, and change it into an interrogative sentence. And they worked together as a group, and then they reported one answer onto the Padlet, and then we could all see what their answers were. So you can see pictures of them and the messy classroom back there, working on it in groups, and then they just submitted one. And really quickly, the last thing is text structure newsletter. So my teammate and I were working on how to make text structure a little bit more enjoyable, because we're talking about all of those different ones. So we had come up with a newsletter idea, but allowing them to pick any topic they want, and then they had to create different articles in those text structures. Believe it or not, the hardest part is having them come up with a topic for the newsletter. Because I think kids are just not used, like we were like, it can be anything, like Bob Ross. I had a student last year who was obsessed with Bob Ross. Everything was Bob Ross. And so he was like, can I make mine about Bob Ross? And I was like, you 1,000% can make it about Bob Ross. And so his was all about Bob Ross. You know, what does Bob Ross like to paint with? And what does Bob Ross like to do in his free time? And like all these different things. And so the hardest part though was the kids that were like, well, could I do like origami? I had one about origami, I had one about horses, I had one about cats, I had one about gerbils. I was like, okay. But then it was funny, they would say, can I do gerbils? I'm like, yeah, do you know a lot about them? They're like, not really. And I was like, okay, pick something you do know a lot about. This one was about basketball, so you can see they would talk about, you know, compare and contrast, all of those different things. We did this in Apple Pages as well. Quizzes is the last one that I think I was going to talk about because I like it better than Kahoot. Again, those of you that are in the classroom setting, I always joke that Kahoot makes me like a horrible person because I find that I'm yelling by the time we're done with the Kahoot. And it was supposed to be fun, and it's not fun for anyone, including them, because they're just too hyped up and they're too focused on like who's winning and who's doing all these things. And I honestly don't think they're paying attention to the questions at all. So when I want them to have fun, or I call it the illusion of fun sometimes, we do quizzes because they can actually, you can send it as homework, you can play it live, you can jumble the questions, you can show the answers, the question timer, I like to turn that one off, that's why it's circled, because I don't want you to get more points for answering it faster. That's not the point. And that's the difference for me between Kahoot and quizzes that I will say every day. Super fun to make your own memes, so that's our principal right there. You can add pictures of kids in the class. I like that one. So the last thing before lunch is start small. There was a lot today, and some of you, I know when I was sitting there, I'm like, well, I don't have Google Classroom. Stop telling me about it. I don't have Google Drive. Start small. Pick one thing. Ask for help. Twitter, Facebook, here, anything. Your PLN is your best resource. Don't do everything at once. Don't be afraid of mistakes. Let the kids help you, because a lot of the times they're better at it. And remember why you do what you do every day, or why you try these new things, why you come here. Because you're really just trying to give them the best. So thanks for coming. Email me if you have any questions. I will link everything. All right, time for lunch. 12:30. I'm on the clock.
I don't know. Are you gonna? On the program.
Oh my gosh.
Sometimes they say,
So I auditioned. I was like, yep, sure, we'll download it in there. It's been awesome. Thank you. Yes, I will. I'm gonna make sure all of the links are available for somebody outside. I would go to Lindsay and then I'll tweet it out and put it to the Lindsay hashtag too. So if you that's okay. I'll put it on the website. Oh, there we go. Just create one. So then you would just follow this or this person. Nope, just me. But I'll put it on the website. That's fine. That's your motivation. If not, I'm here for 3 days. I'm in here tomorrow morning at 9:30 if you need me.
I was gonna say, your bookmark.
I'm just really excited. Okay. Yeah, I did up until this year. It's been nice to only have 2.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Somebody has a jacket with
okay.
a slid between
If somebody
the chair
comes
and
back,
the wall. Yeah.
so leave it. I am. That's what I was just telling her. I have my one tomorrow at 9:30. It's called Fixer Upper, so I'm really busy.
Yeah.
It's actually what I did prior to only being ELA. So it's math. Yeah, it's math, ELA, social studies, and science. It's gonna be all the examples of things. And it's like the way I took a lesson before we ever had tech, because when I started, we had a projector in the middle of the room.
Yeah.
And now we're running on iPads. So it's all like how I did it from here and moved it to here. So it'll be all these lesson examples. But I took some parts of that to put in here, and I just need to make sure the links are uploaded by somebody outside of it. So yeah, then I'll put it.
I don't know. Sometimes I've seen them.